High school might have been the most painful period of my life. Hours wasted on subjects that didn't interest me, a social circle that was built around drinking and drugs, and zero female attention, which, as an 18-year-old male, can rapidly spiral into hatred or depression. Since I was denied this, of course due to my own ignorance and incompetence, my brain developed what I call obsessive crushes. Obsessive crushes border on a parasocial relationship. A girl occupied my mind so severely that I felt ecstasy when she'd simply look at me, and despair if she didn't. I'm willing to bet that you can relate to this obsessive crush experience, but for me, thankfully, high school times are long gone, and today I know my obsessive crush phenomenon has a psychological equivalent, and it's called limerence. Limerence is a pretty negative obsession, and I'm happy to have passed that stage of my life, but my more general obsessive tendencies, well, turns out they've only flourished in the years that followed, mostly for the better and sometimes for the worse. Yet, during my research on obsession in psychology, I realized something profoundly horrible and twisted. Obsession is always negative, and that's in absolute terms. Psychology views obsession exclusively as pathological. And even more horribly, psychology has not produced enough meaningful literature on any positive obsession adjacent concepts. Like passion is mentioned, and motivation maybe. The other side of culture ain't that much better though. In this new economy of self-development, content creation, and inflamed social media discussion, obsession has become a badge of honor, devoid of any negativity. And both do have a point, but it's not the full story. So naturally, as a chronically obsessed person myself, I dove deep into the literature. And with this article, I want to help fellow chronically obsessed people understand their own human nature and attain the heights of productive, beneficial obsession. And accidentally, I've made a video around the thesis so dense it could easily be the subject of an entire book. So, my bad. The first problem with obsession is in its definition. Psychology uses obsession as pathology essentially. OCD, negative rumination, intrusive thoughts, obsessive love, monomania, just to name a few. So, a purely psychological lens on the topic would not only be biased, but also pointlessly hopeless. But this is in stark contrast to what you see online. Obsession there is highly respected. It's heroism, determination to achieve one's goal at all costs. Inventors, entrepreneurs, and all successful guys and gals we know are basically obsessed. They're obsessed with their craft, their work, maybe just with money, but they're all obsessed, and we respect those people. So, is obsession bad in those cases? It can be bad, sure. I mean, if you chase nothing but status, achievement, and money, your internal and personal life is potentially going to be in shambles, but it certainly isn't all bad all the time. So then, is obsession just defined differently in online culture and psychology? I mean, yeah, fuck, maybe it is, but I'm still baffled that psychology refuses to acknowledge any positive aspects of obsession, though they clearly exist. The first line of change then is to define obsession in a way that's suitable for both the negativity biased psychologists and the obsession worshippers of the internet. For example, here's one. Obsession is when an object, person, activity, idea, or goal takes over a disproportionate amount of mental space and gains priority over identity, emotional salience, attention, motivation, and your future. So in detail, that's identity. The obsession becomes part of who you are. For example, a person obsessed with the gym naturally becomes a gym bro. Emotional salience means your mood is highly influenced by progress, discovery, or reciprocation of your obsession. For example, a new insight in the topic you love, or your crush smiling at you. Attention means disproportionate amounts of your attention and focus are redirected towards the obsession, even or especially outside your engagement with it. For example, your thoughts keep returning to the obsession during walks, meals, showers, and more. Then motivation essentially means the obsession fundamentally changes how you act and what you spend your time on every day. You'll primarily be trying to engage and spend more time with your obsession. Future priority just means long-term agentic features such as goals and internal drivers are changed and influenced significantly based on your obsession. So as an example, if your obsession is content creation, you'd likely set a goal to become an independent content creator in the future, probably even disregarding other career options. Or in short, obsession infiltrates every inch of your mind and just won't fuck off anymore, leaving you to deal with it, for better or worse. So inherently this definition is neutral. It's clear that obsession can take over parts of your life, but is that good or bad? We'll see. But as a last note on the definition of obsession, here's one I like very much, and it's very short. Motivation is wanting to do the thing. Discipline is doing the thing anyway. Obsession is not being able to not do the thing. Chris Williamson, ladies and gentlemen. Section 2. So, obsession is clearly more than just a feeling. You can feel obsessed at any given moment, just as you can feel selfish at any given moment, but that wouldn't indicate how highly you score on a trait of narcissism. And just like narcissism, the capacity for obsession must somewhat exist on a scale. So psychology focuses mostly on the pathological versions of obsession, most notably OCD. And OCD is a condition so closely interwoven with obsession, I mean it's literally in the name, that Wikipedia will link you to its OCD article when you search up obsession. I hopefully don't have to mention that clinical OCD is a terrible condition. It's both non-curable and has a reliably negative impact on all its patients' life satisfaction. But does it mean that because extreme obsession is found in OCD, normal people don't have the capacity for obsession? And does it mean that because obsession in OCD exists and is bad, all obsession is bad? Well, I'll give you a double whopper no to that. Some evolutionary psychologists have proposed that OCD is a maladaptive, extreme, end-of-the-spectrum version of a general trait, which can be helpful in a tribe setting. Think about it. In a hunter-gatherer tribe setting 50,000 years ago, a person with a mild threat detection obsession useful? Well, probably yes. The capacity for obsession might have been selected for just like any other important or semi-important trait for our survival, and is expressed differently across individuals. So OCD might sit at one end of the obsessive spectrum, which, as I said, is then highly maladaptive and tragic, while most people, in general, seem to display a lower capacity or predisposition for obsession. But some people, they might have an expertly mixed genetic cocktail for a higher, non-pathological capacity for obsession, and I'd throw myself into that box first. But what about nurture then? First, I want to touch on a concept Robert Greene laid out in his brilliant book Mastery. Mastery in itself is a form of obsession. Obsession with your craft, obsession with progress in your skills, obsession with innovation, invention, and discovery. And Greene says to start your search for mastery, you should look at your childhood interests. Childhood fascinations shape someone forever. Your upbringing, the types of play you had access to, and the types of topics that fascinated you in your early years determine how your future obsession is expressed. Another prominent figure in psychology would agree, just in a much stranger fashion, Sigmund Freud himself. Two of his concepts, fixation and imprinting, essentially proposed that early childhood experience fundamentally stamp in a sort of unique emotional map in every individual. So we grow up desiring certain qualities in a partner. We evolve different needs for admiration, challenge, or comfort. And most importantly to Freud, we grow up with different emotional wounds. Wounds in which obsession can flourish. I mean, think about the mom who's been preaching success over everything to her son since birth. Or the inattentive dad who causes his daughter to obsessively seek male attention for the rest of her life. I mean, you get the point, right? The capacity for obsession exists because of nature, but its expression depends on childhood. Fixation and imprinting are like hooks for obsessive tendencies. So both nature and nurture point to a clear conclusion. Obsession is 100% a double-edged sword, often leaning towards the maladaptive side, which psychology loves to focus on, but it's undoubtedly got the potential for positive adaptation as well. So inherently, obsession might be neutral, but it also depends on what you focus it on. Section 3, Types of Obsession. So, scouring through the limited research, I've found 5 major obsessive themes or obsession types. And I'm willing to bet that you'll see yourself here somewhere. Threat obsession. So, threat obsession is the core of pathologies like OCD, which revolves around imagined threats, and PTSD, which revolves around real threats that happened in the past. Even intrusive thoughts often revolve around threats, harm, suicide, and the like. Maladaptive in almost all cases. Emotional/social obsession. Well, this is often the bad type of rumination that people experience, thoughts passing through your mind as if they're using a revolving door and refusing to exit. Common themes include worry, anxiety, and even cringe memories. I mean, we all have this type of pattern from time to time, but for some, these thoughts dwell and negative rumination can become obsessive. And in that case, I'll dropkick them straight into the maladaptive category. Romantic/sexual obsession. I mean, this can get very dark very quickly. Think of Freudian psychosexual obsession, aka fetishes. It can also cover suboptimal attachment patterns. So if you've ever been with an anxiously attached person before, yeah, pure fucking obsession, I'll tell you. And most notably, it covers my obsessive crush example from the start, in psychology also called limerence. A description of limerence tells you everything you need to know. Constant intrusive thoughts about your LO, which means limerent object, aka the person you're crushing on, an acute longing for reciprocation from your LO, extreme dependence of mood on your LO, a aching of the heart when uncertainty arises, and a feeling of walking on clouds when your LO merely notices you. Very much sounds like obsession and very much is a type of obsession, also mostly maladaptive. Then we've got status/achievement obsession, so in short, domains you can win in. You can win in social media stats. You can win in having the best physique in your gym. And you can win by posting the highest MRR stripe screenshots on Twitter. I mean, these wins are mostly externally rewarding, metrics, numbers, gold medals, titles. Those are things you can see, things other people can see. So you gain both hate through jealousy and love through admiration, leading to people getting addicted to outcomes, metrics, and achievements. The cliche of this is something like the following: a 67-year-old businessman who's sold 8 companies for a combined 9 figures and still works 10 hours each day because he just can't stop. Is that adaptive or maladaptive, healthy or unhealthy? I mean, if you can eventually rein yourself in, an obsessive tendency with money or fame for a few years can be beneficial for yourself and your future. It's super hard to deny that. So we've got potential for both maladaptivity and adaptivity. Next up is intellectual/mastery obsession, and in general I'd call this the most adaptive and healthy form of obsession. Art, science, innovation, and of course people can go too far, and intellectual obsessions can take on pathological forms, but mostly these types of obsessions tend to be intrinsically rewarding, and you further the lives and causes of others through intellect and mastery, and you yourself find deep fulfillment and enjoyment in your craft. So these obsessions can accompany you for years, even an entire lifetime, and I'd call them adaptive in most cases. So onto section 4. Even though I've been on a proper rant about psychology and its treatment of obsession, there's one specific paper I did enjoy reading, and I'll link it in the show notes caption for you to feed it to your AI of choice, probably. So here Valorant and his team of researchers looked at passion, and they divided passion into 2 categories. Harmonious passion, which is also labeled HP, is exactly what it sounds like. HP is internalized willingly and autonomously. It fits neatly inside the rest of your pretty life and causes no trouble. Stubborn persistence doesn't exist here, and apparently with HP, you experience better performance and flow. I mean, sounds sweet enough, but on the other side lies obsessive passion, also labeled OP, as it is obviously more overpowered than its tamer counterpart. Obsessive passion sadly also gets no break from the psychology slander. Instead of I choose this, obsessive passion looks more like I must do this. It causes conflicts with the rest of your life in a struggle of priorities. The persistence you engage with it is rigid and stubborn, and it causes pressure and worse performance, apparently. So put simply, the paper argues OP is bad, and people with HP are happier with their lives, whereas OP often leads to more negativity and suffering. Yet, looking at this from an obsessional lens, HP, so harmonious passion, is by definition more of a Sunday afternoon hobby one engages in. And OP, obsessive passion, is by definition a lot closer to what we defined obsession should look like. Plus, the paper's authors actively encourage the following question: can one argue that OP is necessary to attain the heights of achievement? And this is a really interesting question. Have Newton, Einstein, Darwin, Elon, or the extremely uncontroversial philosopher A. Tate achieved their personal success and furthered the cause of the human race, well, at least some of them have, by having harmonious passion? Did Michael Phelps win his gold medals? Did Lionel Messi and CR7 win their trophies by making their sport a Sunday afternoon hobby? Or did Churchill, Eisenhower, Stalin, and de Gaulle stop Hitler from burning up the world because they thought that might be a nice idea, but let's not forget to take breaks? Well, I guess my point is, obsession is more than just passion. In a lot of cases, it's not only good to have, but even a necessity to attain success and even to quite literally save the human race. I mean, passion is not the answer, and neither is obsessive passion, since, again, psychology turned it negative. Well done. So, what is the missing concept I'm looking for here? Well, the missing concept bridging the psychology research, the real-world necessity for good and important obsession, and the near-definitional approach we took on earlier is this: harmonious obsession. I mean, see what I did there? I fused HP and OP and removed the word passion. Like, I'm so fucking intelligent. Anyway, jokes aside, you might say that this is definitional jargon. I created a random concept without any substance that fits my ideas of obsession better than that of the entirety of psychology. Well, anyone can do that, but if you've watched this far, you've seen a point in my ideas for a new concept that allows obsession to express itself in its positive potential. And I feel like harmonious obsession does exactly that. In an ideal world, it takes the intensity of obsessive passion, the extreme mental centrality, the persistence in the face of setbacks and unfavorable conditions, the proper identity investment, and the willingness to sacrifice other, less important parts of your life for your obsession. But ideally, it should also retain the positive, important elements of HP, the high degree of control over your obsession, the aspects of high fluidity, creativity, and less rigidity, and the non-dependence on outside/external rewards. If you'd slap all of these together, you have a healthy version of obsession, harmonious obsession, which sounds pretty damn good on paper. But how do you develop a higher degree of harmonious obsession? So we're about to tie everything together. The ultimate goal of obsession, if you could choose freely, would be to develop a high degree of harmonious obsession, focusing on a healthy obsession type, with a high natural capacity for obsession and a well-nurtured hook. Well, you can't really control the capacity for obsession that nature bestowed in you. I guess you're either an obsessive person or you're not really. Genes and that in it. But I might as well assume that if you're this far in, you've got a fairly high capacity for obsession. So you have to look at the hook first. The hook of your obsession is likely one of the following. First up, we've got childhood curiosity. What childhood fascinations did you grow up with? And what grown-up adult version of this exists? From my personal life, reading books before I was able to read, so me just swiping through pages, and eventually writing fantasy short stories at 6 years old and onwards eventually turned into the writing obsession I have now. And my obsessive, slightly autistic childhood interest in dinosaurs might have translated into an affinity for biology, evolution, and history. And my childhood interest in games could have evolved into adulthood as a strategy IRL and planning to win the game of life, of course, and take over the world maybe. But I digress. So second up, we've got emotional wounds. What desires still carry emotional weight? And can these be converted into something productive? So this is definitely the trickiest one. It's especially easy for emotion-based obsessions to slip into maladaptive territory, for example, obsessive crushes. Though, yeah, you can still try. An incessant need for attention can be cultivated into actual fame. A deep emotional need for love, sex, and closeness can be used to master dating and teach the healthy type of skills you learned to others. I mean, essentially you can turn anything into something productive as long as you're creative enough. And third up, we've got repeated thought loops. Where does your mind go all the fucking time? Which of these loops contain curiosity topics and problems to solve? Like, this is the straight up simplest route. Essentially, you're trying to see if a curiosity of yours can develop into an obsession, and for sure it can. My initial interest in neuroscience was awakened with Andrew Huberman's podcast series, and it developed into a proper understanding of the human brain through months of obsessive research. And similarly, my interest in psychology was set aflame by reading Robert Greene for the first time, But it didn't stay at that. The interest grew into an obsession through extensive academic study and content creation. So once you have your hook, trust me on this, go down the intellectual slash mastery path. I'm not expecting you to actively try and search for threats or crushes you can obsess over, but I should say it anyway. Stay away from those. And I mean, the status slash achievement obsession path is alluring for sure. So go ahead and treat yourself if you can't help it. Who am I to tell you what to do anyway? It's your choice. So with that out of the way though, we can look at the rest of the obsession engine. So to cultivate obsession, simply follow these very intuitive actions. First up, we have daily contact, which leads to repeated attention. You have to provide your hook with daily exposure to your newfound obsession. Second up, we've got achieving competence gains, which lead to emotional rewards. So gains in competence basically allow for more curiosity and more intrinsic rewards to happen. And then you try to go further in depth, which leads to more behavior change, as well as more curiosity and more obsessive behavior as a result. It's all a loop, right? And the last real point here is identity investment. The more you train the loop, the more the obsession becomes part of your identity. And a suggestion I would make is to create continuous IRL output. One of the most important points of obsession is, of healthy obsession anyway, you create actual useful output, either just for yourself or for people on the internet or for fucking close friends. It really doesn't matter, but creating output, turning your obsession into something tangible really, really helps to keep it under control. And this last sentence might be the most important here. Your obsession will translate into your identity the more the initial hook is relevant to you. What that means is a strong hook makes for strong integration of obsession into identity, which in itself feeds how obsessive the obsession becomes. Look, if the initial hook, like for example, you thought becoming a tax advisor would be a suitable obsession, if that turns out to be weak and non-relevant to identity, well, it turns out tax advisory is boring you to your core. All initially obsessive tendencies that you might have experienced, which in the end was just novelty motivation, well, it will fade fairly quickly. So at its core, obsession is quite simple. You just allow for a healthy curiosity to develop, and if it's starting to infest your mind with obsession, well, you win. So if that's how you develop obsession in a controlled manner, how do you get rid of unhealthy obsessions? Examples like crushes, thought loops, and addiction to metrics. There's no one definitive answer, but I've tried something along these lines before. First, you should name the obsession and recognize it's unhealthy. Second, you should identify the bad hook. Is it childhood trauma, emotional wounds, fantasy? Is the obsession fueled by ambiguity? Is it intermittent rewards or easy access? Once you've figured out what the obsession exactly is, go cold turkey or close the damn door. Like, look, if you're obsessed with video games and you don't want to be anymore, get rid of them, your accounts, everything. In the case of an obsessive crush, get rejected, clearly. Look, I know it hurts. It hurts very badly. But I've tried this before, and until date, it's the single best way I've found to get rid of unhealthy obsessions. And then you have to replace the obsession eventually. Because if you are an obsessive person, your mind will do this anyway. And instead of letting it drift toward a new unhealthy obsession, direct yourself towards a healthier one. And one more important thing, just act. Like, whatever you do, do something. Maladaptive obsessions pull you out of reality, and action usually pulls you in. Healthy action that makes you interact with reality is what I mean here. Talking with real friends and family, hitting the gym, writing 1,000 words. Like, act first if you don't know where to start. Well, fuck though. Generally, like, fuck, we're over the recording time I've set out, and we do have to cut this damn thing short, boys and girls. So, to conclude, we've covered a fuck ton of interesting ideas today, and here are the main ones in chronological order again. Psychology essentially hates obsession and views it negatively, so we created a new definition for obsession, a neutral one. Then nature bestows on us the capacity for obsession, maladaptive and adaptive to be fair. Nurture then provides the psychological hook for obsessions. There are generally 5 main types of obsession potentials. Then the missing concept in psychology, a concept that highlights the positive capacity of obsession, is what I call harmonious obsession and should be studied. And at last, cultivating obsession isn't terribly difficult. Give your mind time and space to develop healthy curiosities and give healthy obsession chances to develop naturally. That's about as quick a conclusion as I can draw. So if you've made it this far, you might as well subscribe. And I'll promise to keep things shorter, at least for the most part. In any case, see you beautifully obsessed people next week.